Yo, everybody, my friends, my fellow people alike, pastrami salami. I've been thinking about life a lot lately. I can't come to deny that. With all the crazy changes going around in the world, it feels like upon me realizing that my own world was crashing in upon itself, I realized that nothing in this world matters except for the experiences that you have along the way. And why I say that is, I've spent a good majority of my life living in ignorance, if you will. I wasn't a quote-unquote truth seeker till I was maybe 18, maybe 17. Spent the majority of my life blissfully ignorant. I was the happiest kid alive. When I tell people I was the happiest kid alive, I truly mean that. Like, every day I woke up and the sunshine brought happiness to my face. The birds chirping outside brought true glee to my overall perfect life at the time. Like, I would eat ice cream in the morning if I wanted to. I would watch cartoons, always be outside. My friends and I were always outside. That's what kills me. One of the reasons why in today's society it fucks me up in the head, just thinking about how kids are given an iPad when they're 4 or 5 years old, or even younger than that, just to entertain them, and they're indoctrinated with that whole ideology at a young age, coming to terms with the technological evolution of things. It's like, you don't have to conform to a specific mindset based on if the mass populace is doing the same thing. Oftentimes than not, I'd say that people who have that pack mentality, who think with the masses, oftentimes than not have no capability of extended thinking for themselves. They kind of have to get all the information from someone else. They don't look into things with a perspective like, oh, maybe I'm being fed some bullshit, because our whole society is being fed bullshit, and I feel very confident saying that. And I see how kids are coming up. I see how lifeless people are. If you have to work a 9 to 5 for your whole existence until you're 65 now, you work until you're barely able to function anymore, right when you're done with your useful lifespan of your life, and then they toss you out just waiting for you to die with the genetically modified foods, and being forced fucking hundreds of pills a week that you have to take for all sorts of shit, for diabetes to high blood pressure, you name it. If you go to the doctor, I'm sure that you can be diagnosed with anything, and before you know it, you could have been living without meds for 50 years. You go to the doctor one day, if you haven't done it very often, and they're like, oh, well, you have pretty high blood, or decently high blood pressure, cholesterol problems, and you have an onset form of arthritis, and they just give you all this shit. And I'm sure that you'd be afraid, and you're like, oh, I have to take that because I don't want to live with diseases in my life. But in reality, you're just making more problems for yourself. And I hate to say that. I know that there are medicines out there that are genuinely good that people need, but at the same time, there's a lot of shit that, especially used when in combination with each other, and all the offset side effects and everything, it scares me. I'm afraid to go to a doctor. I don't want to know what's wrong with me. I know that there might be something wrong with me, but then again, I'm thinking it has to all be in my head. Maybe if I just think hard enough, I can start changing my life with my own thoughts, and that's what I've been really focusing on. I think that's gonna be the subject of my video, is how my revelation of the world around me kind of changed my mindset about my life that I live. I started, let's see, I was always, once I turned 18, my mom kicked me out because I liked to smoke weed, and my stepdad was a military guy, and he really did not appreciate that. And I can understand I was breaking the rules in that sense. Yes, I was smoking weed. I was a junior in high school, I had my card, and I was enjoying life. I can't say I was doing anything else. I tried to always be a good person. I always tried to be respectful and do everything that was told of me to do. But she just couldn't get over that one thing, so I found myself at my dad's house, in a completely new area in a very urban section of New Jersey that is let's just say completely different than the place I grew up in the northern suburbs. So it was hard adjusting to life, and I had a lot of time to really reflect on my decisions I had made up until that point. And I also had a lot of time just wasted, and this was before I started writing music or anything, so I kind of didn't know how to utilize my time. So at first I remember my friends saying something about 9/11 being a lie, or not how the government told us. So that was like the first thing I remember looking into, and I'm sure a lot of people start at the 9/11, sit down and watch a few documentaries on that. And at first my whole world was shook upside down just from hearing about the governmental conspiracies, if you will, like Operation Northwood, and like a fucking heart attack gun that the government has that's that's unclassified now. It's like you learn about all this stuff that the government does, and it starts to freak you out. Like, you become very paranoid when you first learn, if you don't know how to deal with the feelings of the knowledge that you learn, because you're inevitably going to be feeling negative, resentment full feelings. You don't want people doing all this negative shit, whether you can go down the rabbit hole as far as like Masonic sacrifices and all that stuff is just gonna make you feel terrible about the life that you're living, and afraid about for me, I was just very like nervous about everything. Like, nervous if the world was gonna end, nervous if like the CIA is watching me because I'm uncovering some sort of not so hidden gold mine or something. Like, I would just get very paranoid about everything. But I realized that there's multiple layers deeper than that. And this is when I was 18, when I started learning about all the government shit. And I thought I was so woke back then. Whatever your definition of woke is, I'm like, oh, I know everything. Like, oh, the government's fucked up, which the government's so fucked, but like, I know why. Well, I think I know why it's fucked up now, but what I've come to the conclusion, what I've realized is none of that shit really matters. Like, if it's only gonna be a negative feeling that's gonna be associated with that topic whenever I research it, and I really don't like feeling those negative emotions for too long. Like, I'll feel them and I'll acknowledge they're there and I'll learn while I'm at it, but I'm not gonna enclose my whole life with all that shit that just makes me feel terrible. And I'll be honest, I was looking up Mandela Effect because I like to just browse different quote-unquote conspiracy theories just to see what's out there, just to see if maybe I can go down more rabbit holes, because that's what I lived for the longest time. And I remember finding Mandela Effect and not acknowledging it at all. I'm like, oh, well, I didn't understand the quantum components of things. I'm like, oh, people are just misremembering things. Normally I put like at least a little bit of research in to any given subject I find for the first time. I'll give like at least 30 minutes of real research to see if there's any validity to it. And at that time I didn't see any validity to it. This is like when I was 20, so 2 years ago. I'm 22 now. And I had lived my life as I was just going to school, and I was working a 9 to 5, doing all that shit that is required of me to be a successful member of society and all that bullshit. And then one day I happened to stumble upon another Mandela Effect video. This is like 2 years later. This is like my early 20s. So in the summer last year, I stumbled upon a video of a Mandela Effect, and I gave it the time of day. I put some real research into it. I researched more about quantum mechanics before the Mandela Effect, because I realized right away that when they were talking about quantum mechanics being linked with the Mandela Effect and how our physical reality has the real possibility to change in front of our eyes, that's when I started to put like a decent amount of more time into researching quantum computers. Got completely fascinated with the subject and almost I kind of felt disassociated from society, like, to the fullest, because I felt like we were all quote unquote living in a metaphorical or really symbolic matrix, if it's not completely the same thing, which I can't tell you what it is, but I know that it isn't what we assume it is, or what we've been told to believe, at least. So right away, if you know that the world is capable of changing down to the atomic level, and you know that nothing exists unless someone is perceiving that, or like actually looking at that, and how like atoms can actually act differently because they know they're not being watched by humans, that's when my mind started racing to all the different possibilities of there being quite a few abnormalities in the world that we've been told. So I started going down some rabbit holes, and then the next thing I remember stumbling upon was the discussion of flat Earth. And at the time, it was kind of like the hollow hoax thing. It's like, when people told me about the potential of the Holocaust being like a conspiracy and it never happening, when I was in like 9th grade, I remember hearing that, and I just remember thinking, like, what, that person is so fucking retarded. Like, I'm sitting in school like tomorrow learning about how terrible the internment camp conditions were, and you're telling me that nobody, like, or not as many people died as they said, or whatever. Same thing with flat Earth. I had researched it a little bit back in the day. I didn't understand it, just like just like Mandela Effect, just like a lot of things. I've come to realize that the more I know I don't know a lot of shit. So I always try to learn and try to better myself. And I just felt the urge to talk, so that's what I'm gonna do. But I think I came to the conclusion, I started seeing all the lies implanted in NASA, and how they basically like have all the capabilities of lying to us on a mass scale and having nobody even question it. That's when I started getting curious about it, how people would furiously defend NASA, and how, like, saying they would never lie, but knowing that if there's a possibility, and even if they lied one time, then that messes up their validity for the rest of their adventures to space. I don't believe anything that they say, and there's evidence to support otherwise, and that's kind of the natural conclusion that I came. And with that, made me really consider the possibility of us just living on not a sphere, if you will. And it has brought me a lot of peace over the days. I walk around and I just appreciate Earth so much more, knowing that it could very well, and in my opinion, it is a manufactured paradise. Perfect living conditions for us to experience life to the fullest. And I'm gonna revert back to my original point, where I say that life is all about the experiences you have along the way, because anything you acquire in terms of like materialistic possession is gonna either fade, or you're gonna lose it, you're gonna get rid of it, you're gonna forget about it, you're gonna still use it, whatever, but the meaning of it and like the excitement you had towards it's gonna dissipate. But the experience you have will last a lifetime, and that's like the broadest category. But I'm talking like just going out and talking to a lot of people in like a social atmosphere, and just really enjoying that moment and relishing that moment, or partying with your boys, or, you know, tripping on shrooms in the middle of the woods behind your house and just listening to all the birds chirping. Is like all of that it's all the moments that you know that you're gonna remember, and I just relish for those opportunities. And now I'm not scared of what the future will bring. I know that the world's changing and whatnot. I'm just excited to be alive. I'm excited to witness what the Lord has, not the Lord, but what God, the creator of this quantum paradise, has in store for me. You know, I believe in a God, but I'm not religious, if that makes sense. I think that makes a lot of sense. Deism. And I think that the world that we live on is the most beautiful thing ever. And if you're still listening to me at this point, then I'm surprised. I just felt like rambling today. I hope everyone has a lovely day, and really make the most out of it if you can. One love.